Hey, we're going to start in just a second. We're waiting to get everybody back in. Steve, Mr. Mayor, you want to just give us a humorous with how many Zoom calls you've been on since March of last year?
Actually, I went down to the county courthouse last week, and I officially changed my middle name to Zoom. So it is now, I'm now Stephen Z. Benjamin. A lot. It's amazing how the world is connected right now. You can get a lot of things done. Honestly, meetings become more efficient. And in the challenging times in which we live right now, it's the safest way to do business. So it lacks the personal. You can't hug, you can't bro hug, you can't touch, and everything else. I miss that, but a lot. Just like the rest of y'all, a half dozen times a day at least sometimes. So sometimes twice that much.
We're glad you're here. Mark, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, great. Welcome everybody to the February 2021 Issues Forum. This is the Columbia Chamber monthly meeting that we host to discuss critical issues or impactful issues, potentially impactful issues that will impact the Columbia business community. And we are very pleased today to have with us a man who needs no introduction, is known to everybody in Columbia, Mayor Steve Benjamin. I am Mark James. I'm with Cypress Real Estate Partners, as well as the chairman of the Public Policy Committee, which is the official host of this forum and part of the Chamber of Commerce. And Mayor Benjamin has been in office since 2010. He has been a busy man in that period of time. He's been involved and engaged in and provided leadership on a number of issues that are going to be impactful on the city of Columbia for years and years to come. Just to name a few, will be the Bull Street redevelopment, the minor league baseball team that is now in Columbia, and the new stadium that they have, the city's purchase of the post office and redevelopment of that area, just a number of issues that are going to be a part of Columbia going forward. And then most recently, spearheading the city's efforts on dealing with the coronavirus and all that has meant for us as a community and a business community in Columbia. So we are thrilled to have him. Also, would be remiss if I didn't mention the positions he's held on a national level with a number of municipal organizations. They have provided him a platform and a venue to carry the flag for the Columbia area and for business. And we're very, very pleased and grateful for his willingness to do that. It does take additional time in addition to the responsibilities he has as mayor. So as a fellow with a young family, they're not adding hours in the day. So we're grateful to him for doing that. We are looking forward today to hearing about the opportunities and challenges that are being addressed and considered by city council and city staff. As we said, everything from dealing with COVID to the vaccine rollout and the recent property tax study that came out, and anything that can be shared with economic development, obviously, is going to be of interest. As a housekeeping note, before we get started, everybody is on mute right now. That's the way we need to handle this, obviously. We are going to try to have some time for questions and answers at the end of the mayor's comments. And so if you will use the chat function in your Zoom to get those questions in, I think it would be the best way to do it. And we'll try to have enough time to get the mayor's thoughts on some of y'all's specific questions. With that, again, Mayor, thank you for being here, and the floor is yours.
No, thank you so much, Mark. It's I feel like we've been at this a long time. I think when I first ran for office, neither one of us had any gray hair. Things have changed so dramatically, and as Mark indicated, I'll share some thoughts. Carl and Henry and Susan first sent me the invitation to be here. They asked for 20 minutes worth of comments. I don't think I have 20 minutes worth of comments. I can certainly share some thoughts, but I think it's more important once I share my thoughts, maybe we can go from a monologue to a dialogue. So if you have some questions that haven't already been asked by Mark and some of the questions that were shared previously, please feel free to share them. And obviously I'm very accessible. If it doesn't get touched on in this session together, you can certainly reach out to me directly via email at Stephen with the PH .Benjamin at columbiasc.gov. We're living in some of the most challenging times in which we've ever lived. We continue to face down the greatest pandemic since 1918, the greatest economic disruption we've seen certainly in an election year since 1932, and the greatest social unrest that we've seen in America's cities and states since 1968. We had those three challenges were faced decades apart. We had the opportunity as a nation to face all of them in just over 3 quarters. We are living in downright historic times of rapid change and acceleration on top of these challenges. The market is changing rapidly. We've all watched, I think to some degree, hedge funds go crazy as Reddit took over the stock exchange this past a few weeks with GameStop. We're watching rapid acceleration and change on the issue of climate, something that I know will receive not only a disproportionate amount of attention and discussion, but also resources under the new administration. And we've led on the issue of climate change here in Columbia and through the that Mark mentioned. And we're in a period of rapid change as it relates to technology and the future of work. Trends that we saw and that we studied in partnership, Columbia, along with Long Beach and Gary, Indiana, partnered up with the African American Mayors Association at Harvard University, looking at the future of work and ways in which the way in which we work was changing fundamentally, and what the effects of advanced machine learning and automation would have on significant swaths of our citizens, particularly those living in the 2 bottom quintiles of American economic society. So these rapid changes around the market, around climate change, around future of work, and so many other areas are significantly affecting what we do. It's important. I do want to do just a bit of stage setting. Many of you may know, most of you will not know. I looked at the list of participants, at least those who joined by the time we started. And many people met me for the first time as mayor. You may not know that when I became mayor, I was chair-elect of the Chamber of Commerce. I was set to become the chair of the chamber. I served on the executive committee at that time of the Midlands Business Leadership Group. I was a Main Street property owner and the longest serving member of the City Center Partnerships Board. At that time, I served on the board of the Columbia Development Corporation as we led the redevelopment of the Vista. I served on the board of directors of one of our still largest banks in Columbia and in South Carolina. I came from the business community, and I brought with me the belief that it's our job as public sector leaders to try and work to create the environment where private sector capital can land, and then surrounded with policies that allows that investment to grow. That you start from the inside out. You start in great cities with a dense, vibrant urban core surrounded by great neighborhoods. And we're lucky enough here in the Midlands that you can be in the rural, fishing for bass or hunting for boar, whatever it is that floats your boat right here. But it starts with a dense urban core. So we focus intently on the revitalization of Main Street. Many see what we have on Main Street now, even as we work our way through a pandemic. But some forget the challenges that we face with Mark. It was 450,000 square foot elephants empty on Main Street after SCANA vacated the Central Business District. a number of businesses and buildings that lay fallow or occupied by wig shops or what have you. We've seen a new dynamic investment in Main Street because we started with the basics. Folks said that we wanted to see the city run more like a business. You may remember that we had years of increasing taxes, a lack of investment in infrastructure, that in 2008, 2009, as we emerged from the recession, we were actually furloughing police officers and closing fire stations, and went 2 years without being able to close our books. Over the last 10 years, we finished, I'll write off last year as a dog year, 7 years of God knows what. But 8 of the last 10 years, we finished with a budget surplus. We have cut your property taxes, never raised property taxes, cut them by 12 mils over the last decades. We revitalized Main Street, working arm in arm with the business community, invested well over $500 million. And by the time we're done this year, $250 million in water, sewer, stormwater investment that we've received for 6 years running. The Government Finance Officers Association Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting. We became the first city in the country actually the first public entity to issue the first standalone stormwater green bonds after the 2015 floods, certified by the Climate Bond Initiative, and also built our city's first LEED Gold certified building. We've led on public safety, and I will tell you this: you can disagree with me, and we'll just disagree until the end of the day. Is we have the very best police chief that Columbia's ever had, and he walks arm in arm with the very best sheriff that Richland County has ever had. 2 men surrounded by men and women who work every single day to provide, yes, tough policing to keep our city safe, but also invest heavily in justice for all, focusing on training and accountability in law enforcement that helps us build the city that we want to be a truly just city. We've led as the first city in the country to ban the attachment of bump stocks and trigger cranks to firearms in Columbia. I served as a chief of the state's second largest law enforcement agency a lifetime ago, and I own firearms. I understand firearms, so I believe that with rights come responsibilities. I'll touch on some of our efforts in public safety a little bit further down the road, but I'll tell you, we have too many guns on the streets of America's cities and towns, and Columbia is no exception to that rule. I'll get and talk about law enforcement since I'm already there. We'll continue to invest in trying to make sure we have safe streets. We've got good, solid men and women. I believe strongly you hire good people, you give them the resources to do the job, and you make sure we hold them accountable. We have a transparent system of law enforcement, and we've been leveraging technology in new and unique ways through the ShotSpotter technology that some of you have maybe read about in the newspaper. It tells you with precision, literally within feet, within seconds and within feet, as to when a firearm has been discharged. In some of our areas where we see a lot of firearm activity, we were able just recently to expand an additional mile. Over the last year, we were able to generate 1,167 alerts, detecting 4,450 rounds of gunfire, able to take 63 guns off the street, 42 arrests, by allowing our officers utilizing technology to be able, literally within seconds, have a notification on their smartphones telling them where something has happened. It has done wonders in the community to increase the confidence in the police and the relationship between the community and the police officers who serve them. We continue to invest in Main Street redevelopment and in Vista redevelopment, working closely with the university and others to try and open up the river for the very first time. We work closely with those on Bull Street, recognizing the fact that Bull Street, although we still have some folks out there who question the investment, Bull Street is 2.5 times the size of our central business district, guys. I mean, so you talk about investments for posterity, that the opportunity that when I became mayor, we debated it for well over a decade. The opportunity to bring Bull Street into the public domain is still probably the greatest economic opportunity that the city faces. We were able to avoid a disaster, and the Babcock building is under development as we speak. Clacking is moving forward. It is downright exciting. In order for Bull Street, now I'm just going to jump, Mark, if it's okay, jump right into some of the issues and questions around the tax study, if that's okay. Just go ahead and dive in head first. Y'all know me. The older I get, the less I hold my tongue, Carl. You know that. The tax study presents an opportunity for us to have really good and frank discussion around how we move forward together. I think there's some good content in there, and obviously at some of the chamber panels and also at our city council meeting, I disagreed with some of the ideas there. I believe strongly that we have to be creative in a very unique environment. A city that has not only the state capitol sitting in the center of it, not paying any taxes, the largest university in our state, a significant healthcare infrastructure, the state's, I mean, of course, the largest military institution in the country, training institution in the country, and thank God we got a church on almost every corner. That's all right. We have to get the downright creative to find ways to incentivize more private sector investment. So I know people often talk about selective tax breaks as being the challenge. And oftentimes it's usually folks who come to me asking for selective tax breaks for themselves, but not wanting them for others. The reality is that selective tax breaks brought BMW to South Carolina. Selective tax breaks brought Boeing to South Carolina, Amazon, Nefron. It brought the largest brewery being constructed in the United States in the last 2.5 decades to Columbia. I brought Jushi to Columbia as well. Selected tax breaks by using the Bailey Bill has helped us revitalize every single historic building in the Vista, as well as Main Street, and will assist in the development of Bull Street. So I think it's important for us to look at in a very strategic way what exactly helps us build the collective, allows us to raise the amount of resources that we bring in while not raising taxes, as we have, again, over the last decade, decreased millage in the city by over 12 mills. We should work closely, very closely with the county. The county has not significantly increased taxes. We've watched operating expenses and bonded indebtedness certainly go up at the school districts, but bonded indebtedness supported by the voters. The voters have made those decisions. So we have to find ways, certainly, for everyone to start working together much more aggressively and find every single opportunity towards consolidating our efforts and finding ways to reduce spending prospectively that should inure to the benefit of taxpayers. But when we talk about ending selected tax breaks, and I'll just use a very clear example, and Carl and Henry have heard me use this example before. The old parking lot that sat beside the IHOP on Assembly Street, a surface gravel parking lot that paid $15,000 in taxes pre-development, without any public funding made available to it. But yes, forego 50% of the taxes for 10 years, and in the 11th year, it goes to full freight. That piece of property went from paying $15,000 in taxes to paying well over $500,000 in taxes. And at the end of 10 years, well over $1 million in taxes without any public investment. Over 60% of that goes to the school district. The rest goes to the county and city to be reinvested in the infrastructure that we all need: the water, sewer, stormwater, police, fire, all the things that we need without raising taxes. So we have to continue to use the same tools that have been used to incentivize development all across the state to the benefit of ourselves here in the Midlands. And I would submit that I think it's important for the business community to support our opportunities to continue to seek private sector investment and to watch it grow. We've seen hundreds of millions of dollars of investment in that space. And I think I think it'd be a mistake to try and end that type of innovation without being a bit more thoughtful. I'm not going to be too presumptuous as to suggest the things that the chamber should focus on this year or next year, but I will make some broad comments, and I'm going to shut up and take some questions. We are in the midst of the greatest pandemic we've seen in over 100 years, and to say that the public response on the federal level, state level, and certainly in a number of local communities has been wanting in many respects. This public health crisis has put us into a position that served as a great X-ray of American society. All the things, all the broken bones have been exposed quite well, whether it's digital equity and access to broadband, or a healthcare system that we knew was already challenging, our failure to expand Medicaid, and what that has meant to access to healthcare in our rural communities that we speak about them as if we're in the center of New York City. The reality is that our rural communities are, as a crow flies, just a few miles from each and every one of us. People are certainly hurting. We should use this crisis as an opportunity to make significant investments and strategic decisions as to how we move forward as a society. We need to make sure that the ideas that we advance are obviously nonpartisan, but focus on the things that I believe will help change this city, this state, and this country for the betterment of all people. I think that left-right binary politics doesn't apply anymore in a binary world. We need true ecosystem solutions that actually help address some of these major challenges that we're facing. I said left-right doesn't work anymore because the fastest growing political ID in America is independent. People are growing increasingly tired of the politics. We need to form creative partnerships with Midlands Tech and the universities, the USC and Benedict and Columbia College and others that mirror what IBM has been able to do with places like Northeastern. IBM, that their partnership was the very first one to turn digital badges into academic credentials for learners worldwide. How do people work in your businesses every single day and continue to earn credit towards college degrees? How do people work and learn and work and learn and work and learn so that the precipitous cost of public education, of higher education, of a college education becomes more real to each and every one of us, because it's getting out of touch. As a man who plans to send two girls to college in a few years, we have to try and enhance the ability for every single company on this call to provide some type of just-in-time learning, recognizing that the skills needed for 21st century jobs changes literally every single day. We've got to continue to invest in infrastructure and create an environment that strongly encourages people to invest in infrastructure. Every single $1 billion we spend in infrastructure creates at least 15 to 20,000 construction jobs, and some jobs that last after that. We're in the period in American history now in which we're spending trillions of dollars, literally trillions of dollars, and what are essentially transfer payments. They're going from the government to the public sector, and understanding that right now is a time in which we need it now more than ever. But we will have all these investments, trillions of dollars, and no bridge to show for it. We've got to reshape our focus that allows us to invest more in infrastructure that helps America get past our D+ rating from the American Society of Civil Engineers. I would hope that the chamber, working alongside the city and the school district and the county and others, would focus on infrastructure investment. And I think, obviously, I've talked about healthcare, and a big proponent of Medicaid expansion. Our state has left billions of dollars on the table that could be used to help hundreds of thousands of families across the state. We should advocate for Medicaid expansion here in South Carolina. And lastly, I think we got to continue to put some really precise solutions on the table for more small businesses across this country. Congress moved forward, and I believe rightfully so, on both sides of the aisle, on a rapid response to the pandemic through the Paycheck Protection Act, making resources available to help us get through some very difficult times. I think all of us at that time expected the period within which we would be operating to be much more narrow, because certainly we expected to get through it a lot faster. The way that we handled the pandemic, we were very focused, Mark, as you mentioned early, here in Columbia, that we were going to focus on data. We were not going to let politics drive our decisions, that we were going to strongly encourage testing. Testing will give us data, data will give us intelligence, intelligence will allow us to make policy decisions. We received a significant amount of pushback from a lot of folks who did not want to follow the data, and we were willing to take our stripes because of it. But as we focus on small businesses, I think we're going to have to really be very precise in what we ask for and what we advocate for on the federal level, whatever happens as relates to state policy making, and certainly we move forward with our own plans here locally to make resources available to hundreds of businesses and also critical non-profits. But as we go forward, I think it's important that as new versions of the Paycheck Protection Act or other type of federal aid becomes available, that we've got to make sure that the little guys, that small businesses actually win in this iteration. All the data shows, and it was fairly pronounced in South Carolina, that a lot of our larger companies and larger businesses with a balance sheet, with existing banking relationships, did better in accessing capital than small businesses. And we've got to flip that over on its head and make sure that we're in the front advocating for small businesses. I just believe that we've got to, in closing, we've got to lead from a thoughtful position that forces everyone to move the cheese back to center. If you start advocating for thoughtful, pro-business, pro-people policies, and avoid an agenda that speaks to the far right and the far left, then you actually start getting some good policy, and that happens arm in arm with your public sector leaders. A lot of the leadership actually needs to come from the private sector, not the public sector. But move that cheese back to center, and you move the cheese, you move the mouse, and people will start gravitating back towards thoughtful policy solutions that actually work. I'm going to shut up and take some questions. Carl?
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Got a couple of questions that I'll throw in, and I'll throw it back to you, Mr. Chairman. Ted Creech has said, can you update us on the repair of the canal and the importance of that water?
Yeah, it's been a heck of a journey that I really want to thank our incredible staff, Clint Shealy, who leads Columbia Water, through constant advocacy and working closely with FEMA. Things are moving forward. Things are moving forward. It's been a journey, and I think many of you who've watched the public discussion of it, most of those discussions happen in private until they have to go public. And I've been quite open and critical of the federal government. Our position, Carl and Ted, has been that when we go to Washington, D.C. seeking assistance with projects, it's not like we're going to Washington, D.C. seeking money like it's manna falling from heaven. They're our tax dollars that we send to Washington. And in the event of a natural disaster, we go to Washington and ask for the repatriation of those dollars to come home to deal with that natural disaster. It's not anything different than Superstorm Sandy or Hurricane Andrew. We were faced with a historic wet weather event here in Columbia in 2015. And the initial response back that we got from the federal government, slow first under the Obama administration and then slow under the Trump administration, it was insufficient. So we actively worked closely with FEMA. We actively lobbied aggressively, and now the repairs are moving forward with the canal, the head gates, and making sure not only do we have the repairs to the historic canal, but we also will have all the redundancy efforts in place so that if something were to happen again, the water supply would not be threatened.
Great. And then one more from Mr. Jim Morris. An unintended consequence of the pandemic has allowed many restaurants to provide outside dining, much like many large cities. Hope our city officials will allow this to continue. It helps restaurants bring in more revenue, which adds taxes to the city. It also improves the pleasantness of the experience.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's been a big plus. We're lucky that we're not in places like, I talked to the mayor of Lansing, Michigan, and others. Obviously, when it gets cold, it gets really cold there, and we don't have these options. I know that our city staff, those that handle rights of way, and as well as fire marshals and others, have worked very closely with a number of businesses and done it in record time. That have allowed folks to expand outside dining. Obviously, the goal is always to create a much more connected, walkable experience. And I think people sitting outside, dining, fellowshipping, not only is it healthier in the current world in which we live, but I think it also helps build a stronger community. So no, I couldn't agree more.
Mark?
Great. Mayor, thank you for all those comments. And I even had forgotten, as hard as it is to believe, about your leadership during the flood in 2015. And it's just another part of the list of things that have occurred under your leadership. And I do want to circle back to the tax study. That has been identified as a priority for the chamber, and trying to figure out how do we, first of all, I want to compliment the city council on commissioning that study. I think it was very informative and put a lot of data on some things that I think a lot of folks have kind of speculated on. It rejected some thoughts, and while maybe not everybody's in total agreement on all of it, I do think it's worth trying to figure out how we can make something positive out of it. It is a complicated issue. It is, as you mentioned, it involves the city, it involves the county, it involves the school districts, and the school districts, not just from an operational standpoint, but from a bonding standpoint on some of the facility investments that they've made. What is the path forward, without discussing maybe bits and pieces of it? What is the way that we can really try to have that be something useful that we can use going forward?
Most of the most significant, I should say, I think they're probably two separate paths, Mark. I think we keep discussing it and discussing what potential solutions we can achieve on the state level and the local level. On the local level, where we reside, I think that every single opportunity to try and find ways to reduce expenses by working together should be thoughtfully pursued, and that obviously that's the responsibility of all of us on this call to advocate for that at the city, at the county, and certainly at the school districts. The most significant changes, those that will inure, I think, most significantly to everyone's pocketbooks that have been advocated in the tax study, require state law change. You have friends in the legislature, as do I. If in fact we want to see those things happen, then that needs to be at the top of the chamber's legislative agenda. to push for state law change to make that happen. There are things that cannot happen on the local level. We're not allowed by state law. So I would encourage that advocacy on the state level. On the local level, I would again, and Carl gets tired of me saying this. I want you all, some of you are pack rats like I am. You go back and look at your tax bills for the last decade. Your millage rate has not gone up in the city of Columbia; it's gone down. We've committed to that, and that's been our focus. As relates to bonded indebtedness of the school districts, the voters have made some decisions. If we disagree with them, I think we need to talk to our neighbors who voted in the affirmative. But I also believe that every single day, administrators and policymakers have to make very clear decisions based on the financial information that we have before us. The systemic issues that have been raised in the tax study show that we have some significant challenges that are, although maybe not the same for the same reasons, that are fairly unique to Columbia. How do we address it? The cost to educate a child in Columbia, Richland County is no different than the cost, the true cost to educate a child in York County, Charleston County, or Greenville County. So we have to make sure we have the resources to do it. If the value of a mill is depressed for whatever reason, it does not mitigate the true cost still to educate that child. So I would encourage thoughtful, facilitated dialogue with the school districts, with the school district commissioners who've been elected by you and your neighbors, to actually move that conversation along in a way that brings people together. Happy to help lead in those discussions, happy to pull those discussions together. In the meantime, the municipal corporation as a city will continue doing what we've been doing for the last 10, 11 years. I would say lead, but understanding that the way in which you actually dialogue is by doing just that. You actually talk to people and see if you can find common ground as to how to move forward. That has not always been the case here. I've talked to Dr. Gunlockson and I've shared with her my opinions. I've talked to my colleagues on city council. I will tell you that the approach utilized before we took over in 2010 of cutting public resources to the bone, of furloughing police officers, of shutting down fire stations, of having fire sales of public property, of not investing in our infrastructure, of not controlling healthcare costs. All the things that we did then wasn't the way to go. We've run a thoughtful, fiscally responsible public corporation that I think would make any private sector party on this call either proud or envious of what we've done. We're going to continue doing that. Every public entity should be looking to do the same. I will tell you that you'll never cut your way into prosperity. So we've got to find ways to thoughtfully engage with some of our other public sector partners to help us get to the point to where we are actually making sure we're educating our children in a safe environment. The resources are there, but we find every single opportunity to consolidate efforts and save tax dollars. I will tell you this. I don't believe that that property taxes are the only issue affecting investment in the Midlands. I just refuse to accept that. We as I mentioned earlier, just landed the largest brewery investment in America in the last 3 decades here. Jushi was not long before that. We've used multi-county industrial parks like everyone else, in Philos, just like everyone else who seeks to attract significant industrial investment in our communities. We've got to start thinking much more about where the world is going, how, as Tom Friedman would say, terrestrial versus cyber. what the future of work means and how we're preparing our children and our employees for this world of lifelong learning and investing in the quality of life infrastructure that tries to attract the best and brightest to the Midlands. I think that the property tax discussion can at times become a bit of a 19th century or 20th century discussion. And while the world is moving very rapidly towards the future of work and a much more technology-based discussion, where people can literally live anywhere in the world and work anywhere in the world. And that's where our focus should be as well. But the very simple answer to your question, Mark, I think we should continue to work together. Whether it's a city council committee or a city council, county council, school district, chamber, a led group, looking for whatever wins we can get as recommended by the tax study. And we ought to, again, combine forces on those state law changes that need to be made and go to the members of our delegation and ask for advocacy to get things done there.
Yeah, I tell you that you're nailing the complexity of the issue. There has been some talk about a task force being assembled that would include a number of representatives from these organizations. Is there any traction on that? Any movement towards assembling that group?
I thought we discussed that at our council meeting when Dr. Gunlogson reported to us. If I tell you, if that has not been formalized, Mark, I'll make sure it's formalized at today's council meeting. How about that?
Okay, good.
All
Right. I've got a couple for you, if you don't mind, Mark. Let me jump it in right quick. Rusty had a question. Part of being a progressive city, in my opinion, is focus on multimodal transportation, walk, bike, rail, light rail, buses. What is the city doing to place emphasis on these areas whenever and wherever development is planned?
Sure. I think the most exciting opportunity in that space is a plan that we've advanced, and it's not expensive. Obviously, everything's expensive nowadays as cities and local governments across the country are facing significant challenges. You all know we cut about $30 million from our budget this past year because of the pandemic, and right now it looks like things are rebounding, and as we begin the budget process, we'll see where things go. But I couldn't agree more that multimodal investments allow people to walk, bike, still not scooter yet, to utilize our Comet, which I think has made some significant strides for the better, are indicative of how you build a much more modern 21st century city. There's some exciting opportunities that have emerged. There's a bit of a disconnection if you talk about the Vista Greenway and the eventual connection to the Three Rivers Greenway. That's moving forward. The Saluda Riverwalk is probably one of the most exciting things. Eventually, you will be able to walk from downtown Columbia out to the Irmo Chapin Recreation Center and Lake Murray. I mean, those things are coming. But I will tell you that just as we speak on this phone, some of the decisions that we've made to implement that walk bike infrastructure has met some significant pushback from communities all across the city, not only Farrow Road, but even some of the east-west corridors in downtown. As we've sought to install bike lanes, you run into 6 businesses on one block who want it and 2 businesses who don't want it. And trying to continue to move forward with building out that infrastructure is a major challenge. There is one plan, and I'll make sure that it's sent over to you, Carl, to share with all the members that takes all the different and disparate plans, some that have been produced by the city, some by the county, some by BPAC, and some by some of our nonprofits, but shows all of them connected in a way that requires about $1 million investment. But it would significantly and fundamentally change at least the walk bike infrastructure in and throughout the urban core and shoot out to East Columbia and North Columbia. I think that's probably the most significant opportunity that we have to enhance that infrastructure. We've got to continue to push and incentivize the creative growth of the Comet. Many of you, again, we some remember, some don't, that our Central Midlands Regional Transportation Authority was dead in the water 10 years ago. We had to run in and save it, injecting some city resources into making that happen. And then obviously the voters decided to invest in it, and we're seeing some significant investment there. But I couldn't agree more that if you're going to be a growing metropolitan area, you got to have the ability to connect people, not only where they live, but from where they live to where they want to work. And that ought to be here in Richland County, in Lexington County. People live in Casey, they work in Northeast Richland County, live in Shandon, and they work out, West Columbia. We've got to connect all the dots for folks.
Great. Last, from my standpoint, Mark, I'll throw it back to two things. Ron Raines, our good friend, Dr. Ron Raines, is on. Mr. Mayor, you may want to comment on the city's partnership with Midlands Technical College Enterprise Campus, a Class A industrial park designed to bring manufacturing industry to the city and to the Midlands.
Okay, that was Dr. Rames's commercial, huh? Yeah. No, I really believe, and I talked about work, learn, work, learn, work, learn. I believe that South Carolina's rise as an economic force on the global scene dates back 60 years, over 60 years, to the establishment of our technical college system and Midlands Tech and the role that it plays in helping make this region competitive is second to none. We've had an ongoing dialogue and discussion, working to continue to grow the Enterprise Campus as what it is. It's an economic development tool and an economic development park here in the Midlands. We're doing some infrastructure investment out there together right now that will continue to see not only commercial growth, but also residential growth. And we're excited about that.
Great.
I would just like to get some feedback from you. There's some news recently about the expansion of the convention center and some hotel projects in that area. And what are you hearing about that? Has the city studied that at all? And what is it?
No, absolutely. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, I am a proponent of expanding the convention center. It is not an inconsequential proposition, as you know. I believe that it has to go hand in hand with private sector investment that's focused on increasing heads and beds and tourism dollars coming into the city. I can't wait, guys. I mean, we've been through a heck of a dog year, but just in the few years before that, we were preparing to host Elton John. We'd hosted Jay-Z and Beyonce and Paul McCartney, and at the beginning of the journey, we had Prince and others come and join us. So the attractiveness of the Midlands to folks is real. People want to come here. When they come here, they love the place. We've got to expand the convention center to be able to host much larger entities and conferences that come here. There needs to be some synchronicity, not just with the private sector investment that Ben Arnold and others might facilitate, maybe capturing that new increment to help facilitate that growth. But there also has to be some synchronicity between the convention center and the university. The opportunity to co-program space between the expanded convention center over that parking lot and the Colonial Life Arena puts you in a whole nother world of potential. So I am a proponent of it. We're seeking some parity in the legislative budget that the governor has supported to help us parity, meaning with Greenville and other places where state investment has also gone. to build or expand convention centers. And I support it. I think it's an important piece of the puzzle that allows us to. I think we're talking about tripling the exhibit space of the convention center, and I think it makes sense.
Mark, let me jump in a couple of things. By the way, Mr. Mayor, I too support the idea of that convention center and hope it comes to fruition soon. A couple of questions. I'm gonna tie them together, but if you will, one, is there any news on opportunity zones, specifically Greenview, Dentsville, Eau Claire, et cetera? And then the reason I'm tying it in is Lynn Hutto has a question. As you speak of pushback regarding efforts towards a walk bike infrastructure, what efforts are made to work with communities and include them and help them understand what is desired? So from a communication standpoint on the walk bike infrastructure models, and then which also leads in some of these areas, opportunity zones and what's happening there. And so as we tie in upper Main Street to North Main and other areas, which are walk bike zones as well.
I do, yeah, sure. Thanks, Carl. I do know there are several opportunity zone projects that are on the drawing board, and I'm excited. I'm excited about it. I'm a proponent of opportunity zones. I think the opportunity to defer capital gains liability in a way that in which you can drive investment in census tracts that help us all grow makes sense. I was a proponent of opportunity zones when Senator Scott and Senator Booker were advocating for it long before anyone knew what the opportunity zone was, partially because of the fact that it was one of the few bipartisan, bicameral ideas that we saw. We saw Ron Kind and Pat Tiberi in the House and Tim Scott and Cory Booker in the Senate pushing on both sides of the aisle for something that just made sense for prospective investment. Opportunity zones are divided just about evenly between urban areas, suburban areas, and rural areas all across America. And while not a panacea, serve as another tool to creatively use private sector investment to meet public good. So I think they made sense. I'd encourage people to look at the city's get a better idea of exactly what opportunity zones could mean for the community. So there are a number of projects on the table. I can't speak to some of the areas outside of the city like Dentsville and the old Columbia Mall area and the like. That was actually the little movie theater out there was probably one of the very first opportunity zone projects in the entire country that the Meeting Place Church executed out there and brought Vice President Pence to Columbia. But I do know there are a couple of big OZ projects that are being, there's some serious due diligence going on right now. And hopefully they will come to fruition. I'm hoping that the tool remains an available tool under the new administration, and that Congress doesn't seek to lose it. That's a whole nother discussion. As it relates to communication around the importance of walk bike infrastructure, I know there's some active communication, and I'm sure as the reason for the question, some of the significant pushback we received, particularly on Farrow Road, around some of that investment. I know left some advocates of walk bike infrastructure unhappy with the decision to not take advantage of the opportunity. But I'll be wholly and completely honest with you that the last year and the challenge that it's presented to us, which I believe are in many respects existential threats to the city, I have not been as focused on walk bike infrastructure. Still an important issue. Still, I know a number of our folks on council, our staff has been invested in it, and also some of our members of our Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I've been focused more so on using good data to promote good public health policy that helps us address saving lives, keeping our economy up and running, and making sure we provide good public services.
Thank you. And last question for me, and then from the chat, and then Mark, I'll let you wrap up if that's okay. What plans does the City of Columbia have? And this what plans does the city of Columbia have in the development of affordable housing, including mixed income housing to facilitate growth and revive neighborhoods?
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent question. You know, obviously we're going through one of the greatest development booms, access to low cost capital, and the macro effects of the pandemic have a lot of folks looking for more space, and we're watching probably the greatest residential real estate boom in several decades right now. That's a good thing. We've got to find more tools. I know there's a affordable housing task force, Ms. Devine and others are leading. I believe that obviously we've got to have, as the question suggests, mixed income, mixed use property. I prefer more density that allows us to utilize underutilized property on commercial corridors. We passed policies to that effect, incentivizing the investment in that space. Most of the development in that space, many of you know, has been using the 9% LIHTC product over the years, which is highly competitive as you go through that QAP process. But you're seeing more and more, particularly with new laws passed by the state, of folks using the 4% product that allow you to get more product built. But it's got to be not development for development's sake, but high quality development that honors the historic commercial corridors that they're on, and also respects the neighborhoods that surround them. You can balance that in a way that's thoughtful. I know the Affordable Housing Task Force is looking at that. I will tell you, as well, that as you get around the city, that there are a number of projects. If you go to the former West Avenue project, if you go behind Drew Wellness across the street from Second Nazareth, a new senior housing, high quality senior housing project that's going to cut the ribbon on very soon. If you go to the Veranda on North Main, you'll see the types of high quality development that we can actually have. The challenge is we need a whole lot more of it. So when we get back to this idea of selective tax breaks, if in fact you want to incentivize the type of development that you want, then we ought to make sure that we exercise the latitude to do so. But it's got to be development again that works for working people. Right now, y'all, a whole lot of folks, working men and women, many of whom work for you on your various businesses, are facing the most challenging times of their lives. And it's up to us as policymakers to find ways to pass policies that give them the opportunity to fully participate in American economic life. We can't have only policies that work for those of us who've been incredibly fortunate. We've got to make sure that we create opportunities to lower burdens on working men and women. I wholeheartedly support that.
Tagging on to that, Mr. Mayor, y'all are in the middle of redoing the planning maps as well, and Krista and her team have worked really, really hard over the last 4 or 5 years to get that done. So
thank you, Paul. That was in my talking points. I didn't talk about it, so thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Kudos to Krista and council. I thought y'all spent a lot of time on that. So, all right, Mark, I'll wrap it up if that's okay. Send it over to you for any last thoughts you have.
Great, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Thank you for your time today. I know it's a busy time for everybody, and we certainly all appreciate what you and City Council are dealing with from a very diverse set of priorities and things you got to tackle. And we're grateful for your time this morning, and grateful for everything that you, City Council, and all the staff the city do for us. And also need to give a shout out, a bit of thanks to our sponsors this morning: Blue Cross Blue Shield, Sign It Quick, Sun Solutions, and Wells Fargo Bank. And also mention that the next Issues Forum will be Tuesday, March the 2nd, again from 8 to 9 a.m. And thank you to all of our partners and members of the business community for the support of the chamber. And if there's anything at all that we can do, please don't hesitate to reach out to Carl or Henry or Susan or any of the staff or myself. we're here for you. So again, Mr. Mayor, thank you, and thank you for everybody who's dialed in today and participated.
Thank you. You guys take care.
Thank you, Mayor.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.